In this video, I'm gonna show you how to produce an Afrobeat song just like this one.
I feel the heat on your tongue, I feel the heat from your body. You take the breath from my lungs, 0 to 60 Bugatti. I'm not looking for love, just some fun.
Hey, what's up? It's Austin here from Make Pop Music, and in today's video, we're gonna cover how to produce an Afrobeat song. And I know what you may be wondering if you're not familiar with our channel. Why would I be listening to this nerdy little white guy tell me how to make Afrobeats? And to that, I would say, fair point. Honestly, we just get so many requests on this style. I do listen to a ton of Afrobeats and Afro-Caribbean music in general, so I'm really excited to dive into this because it's not a genre that I work in a ton, but it is a genre that I thoroughly enjoy and respect. So we're gonna dive in and we're gonna start making an Afrobeat song in 1 second. But before we do, if you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us out a ton. Also, after the video, if you want to support our channel, you can head over to makepopmusic.com and you can check out all of the sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs. We have a start to finish production course. So head over to makepopmusic.com after the video. Let's dive in and let's start making some music. So I just want to start with the key pattern. So what we're going to do is just pull up a chord progression. So I'm on easy key so you can see what I'm going to play. Let's go A major 7 to A flat minor 7, back up to A major 7 to E major 7. Typically in these kind of Afro beats or even kind of like Latin or Caribbean pop, they use these like nice extended chords just to add a little bit of soul, but they're not doing anything too wild. Like we're not making super diminished chords. We're not going to be swapping from major to minor in terms of key. So we're just going to do this. And we're gonna call that good. Let me get some synths pulled up. Here's what I wanna use as kind of my main synth sound. It's just this little mallet from our Vital pack. It's called Synergy, and the preset that I'm gonna use is called Sandy Beach. It's basically just like the steel drum. And I've added a little bit of reverb so we can get that kind of nice, wet, tropical sound. A lot of the time in Afrobeats, they are using stuff that has a little bit more reverb. It's just kind of this like nice, spacey ambient music because we're gonna have some hard-hitting drums that come in a second. So here's what we have. So I feel pretty good about that for the chord progression. We're gonna leave the chord progression pretty simple. I'm not gonna add a ton of rhythm or syncopation because I wanna add that with the drums. So let's go ahead and let's start building out the drums because this, to be honest, is the most important step when you're making something like Afro beats or even Latin pop or Caribbean pop or, you know, Afro-Cuban pop, anything like that. So let's go ahead and let's start making some drum patterns. So I went ahead and laid something out, but I wanna explain why all of these kind of Afro beats and Caribbean pop songs kind of have the same vibe. And that's because they're using a different drum pattern than we typically use in like Western pop. So they're going to use something called claves. And there's a bunch of different kind of subcategories of claves. But, you know, typically in Western pop, you have your kick on the 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you have your snare on the 1, 2, 3, or 4. And sometimes you'll put them at like on the and. But typically it's always snare going to be on the 2 and 4 or snare on the 3. And that kind of gives you that traditional, you know, drummer playing a drum kit rhythm. However, in most Afrobeat songs, not all of them, but almost all of them, we're going to do something called a clave. So it's a completely different pattern. So this is going to be on the 1 and then on the and of the 2 and then on the 4. You can do a lot of different variations but it'll be something like, it's not going to be that typical, you know, kick and snare on the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I've done is I've grabbed this little spacey tom. We're going to build out something that's pretty minimal. I don't want anything super hard hitting yet because we're going to have the verse be pretty vibey. And then we've just pulled in some of these hand percussions. So I think all of these are, I think the space tom is from our chart topper pack. And then the hand percussions are from our smokers pack. But here's what that sounds like. And that's typically a pretty traditional rhythm for Afrobeats. And as we build the song, we'll get more intense with it. We're gonna add a lot of different, you know, ear candy things and different kind of sub rhythms, but that's what I want to do for now. So one thing that I noticed about Afrobeats is a lot of the time the verses are pretty sparse and they'll start to add new things kind of every 4 or every 8 bars. So that's what we're gonna do in this. So we have that kind of space tom acting as kind of like a kick, and then we have those hand percussions that act as a snare. I'm just gonna layer that up with some rim hits. So I just grabbed some rim hits out of, I think, either our vinyl or our indie pop pack. And it just sounds like this now. Just adds a little bit of extra punch and transient. And then I've also taken this sign pad. This is also from our Vital pack called Synergy. This one's just called Wildly Vibey. And it's basically just like these harmonic sine waves. And so what I'm doing is I'm just playing that. And I'm just keeping these like really short. They're basically quarter note measures. Down to that E. And that just gives us a nice little kind of backbeat for the main kick and the main kind of snares that we have happening already. Let's go ahead and let's start building up the drums for this B section of the verse. Right now, I'm pretty cool with this being the A section, but let's build it up a little bit. Okay, let me show you how we're gonna build up this drum. So we're kind of keeping that same kind of sub-clave rhythm that we had going, but what I wanna do now is show you where you can actually layer things like kicks and hats. So here's what we have, and you'll notice that the hats kind of really just mimic this kick and snare pattern, that relationship that we have. We're not adding hats as like a quarter eighth note or like a 16th note or anything super steady. We want that to have that same kind of syncopation. And you can see that we've just added extra little hits here and there just to add a little bit of extra rhythm. And then we're just layering up some different percussion elements now in the background. So we have this perk loop. This is just from, I want to say, an Afrobeats pack on Splice. Have it nice and tucked in. And then I'm just taking a couple different hand percussion and rim shot kind of hits from our Smokers pack. So now all together, we have this really kind of thick rhythm section. And nothing there is actually super different from the rhythm that we had earlier. It's just adding in some of those extra hits. So other than that, the only real thing that we're adding right now is the bass as the background. And this is just a respace from Vital. It's also from that Synergy pack that we have. And it's basically just doing what those sign pads were doing on the root note. So just quarter note holdouts, and then we've got a couple little like slides in here. So let me show you what this verse sounds like now. And then for this next part, I'm going to layer up this little kalimba. I just pulled this from Vital as well. This one's called the Perfect Kalimba, and it's just adding a little bit of transient. But it's doing the same thing that steel drum is doing. So far, we still have a pretty simple arrangement. I might layer in some guitars, but other than that, I'm about ready to move on to the pre-chorus because this is feeling pretty good. So the only guitars that I want to add for this verse are just these nice kind of strummed out chords. Just played on my Fender Strat on the middle pickup, and for processing these, I'm just using the Tone King Imperial. It's just a amp sim by Neural DSP, kind of similar to like what you'd hear with like a Fender Reverb or like the Imperial. And then other than that, that's pretty much it. I'm just spreading these out, so there's one pan to the left, one pan to the right. And then the only thing that I added for these verses was just some drum fills. I actually pulled these from our Kit the Anderson pack. So these are live tracked fills. They were played by Tomas, the guy who recorded all of the drums. And they're just kind of cool little extra vibes to add a little bit of movement. Now going into this pre-chorus, I laid down this kind of secondary guitar. I kind of want the pre-chorus to drop out. And we just have this guitar that I played that's got the Tone King again. This one's a little bit crunchier, so we do have a little bit of overdrive happening, and it's just this like really nice pattern that follows the same chord progression, but kind of adds some extensions. That's what the DI sounds like. Here's with everything. Just kind of a nice edge of breakup tone with a little bit of kind of extra processing with RC20 for some filtering. Let's go ahead and let's move on to this chorus. I want to build up these drums to be huge. This is really where the song is going to open up. Let's talk about these chorus drums. So we have everything that we had from the verse. So we have the space tom with those hand perks happening in the same exact spot. But what we're doing is we're adding a couple different elements, and we're adding the kick to be a 4 on the floor now. So here's what we have now. It's just going to be a slightly different vibe, and it adds a little bit more energy now that we have that kick happening every quarter note. And And now it has a little bit more of that kind of like Caribbean reggaeton vibe. Still happens all the time in Afrobeats, but it allows that chorus to be a little bit bigger. We're also layering up this kind of open hat loop, and we've got these steady hats and these rides. So now this is adding a little bit of a steady kind of pace, since in the verse everything was so syncopated and it was all to that clave rhythm. I want something that's going to happen on a 16th note and on a quarter note. Then we have under the aux drums, those same loops that we had earlier, so that perk loop and then those different hand percussions and that rim, but we're also adding this little shaker loop. Here's what that shaker loop is doing in solo. You can see that I've cut out quite a few different hits and kind of spaces. That's just so it fits along my kind of rhythm a little bit better. And then we're tucking in some drum fills also from the Anderson pack. So now we have a really, really, really big drum arrangement. So we're going from this kind of like ambient spacey guitar to this really hard hitting drum. Now let's get some basses and some synths under this. We can go ahead and talk about the bass. It's the same exact patch. It's not doing anything too different. It's really just adding in extra notes where it can kind of mimic where that kick is happening now with the 4 on the floor. So now with that kind of drum progression that we had, really nice, kind of the backbeat of this whole song. Other than that, we've got the steel drums, the sign pad, and the kalimba from earlier, but you'll see I'm taking out some of the top melody, so we're just simplifying it a little bit. So we have all of that. The sign pad is doing a couple different extra hits. It's kind of doing exactly what the bass is doing in terms of rhythm. And then other than that, the kalimba and that kind of earlier steel drum hit that we have just have some extra hits. So it's adds a little bit of rhythm now since we want the chorus to have a little bit more movement. We're also layering up this Caribbean pluck. This is just to add, again, a little bit of transient and movement. It's a pluck called Yaman. And then I wanted a little bit of counter melody because everything so far has been pretty simple. So we just have this little pluck on top. Just gives us a nice little pretty sparkle. And then other than that, we have this vocal sample that I pulled out from Arcade and just chopped it up. Did a bit of processing with Portal, basically just doing like some granular synthesis and movement on this. It's just the Grain Runner preset. And then some filtering and some kickstart. So here's what we have. And now with everything, we have a pretty big arrangement. I want to add guitars, but before I do, here's what we have. Let's add in some guitars, and then I think the instrumentation is done. For the guitars, I'm just kind of duplicating that verse guitar that I had earlier. Just a nice little spacey back, synth to just kind of fill everything in. And then we have these chorus guitars. They're kind of summed to one bus with a little bit of processing. And they have this really kind of unique pattern. So I just double tracked this and panned one 75% left and 75% right. And for the processing on this, we have Tone King from earlier. We're adding a little bit of extra saturation with Tape by Baby Audio. We're doing quite a bit of like bandpass filtering with Pro Q. Adding quite a bit of reverb with this Valhalla Vintage Verb, and then we're adding some kickstart to kind of get that quarter note swell so it ducks with that kick. And now altogether, here's what we have with all of the instrumentation. I'm gonna add some vocals in, and then I'll show you some vocal processing for this kind of style, and then we'll be done. Vocals are added, so when I wrote the melody, I wrote this in kind of 4 different sections. So we have verse A, we have verse B, we have a pre-chorus, and we have a hook. And then there's like a little post-hook as just a nice little bit of razzle-dazzle. But for the first part of the verse, I'm singing lower in my register, and for processing, it's a super dry, just kind of punchy vocal. All of these are just doing a little bit. It's a little bit of compression with some 2A and a little bit of EQ, and then we've just got some de-essing and some RVox, and then one last little compressor taking away a little bit of low end. Other than that, this is what we have. So this is what the verse sounds like.
I know you wanna come my way. Red high heels making noise to the tempo. Yeah, if you wanna ride my wave, come over.
Let's talk about these extra little throws because those are more important than the kind of generic vocal processing on the lead. So we have this. It is just the lead vocal duplicated, and then I added repeater on 100% wet, quarter note, stereo, and then we have a little bit of reverb just to kind of like sync this into the background, and it sounds like this. And then we've got these 2 little vocals right here. So we've got the low vocal for Come Over, just pitched down and auto-tune with some formant control. And then we've added a little bit of kind of repeater and vintage verb, just like we did with the other one. And then we've got the high version of Come Over, which is just spread up an octave and auto-tune instead of down. And then we have this one with some kickstart and some doubler. So it's not doing anything too wild, but the doubler makes the high version kind of spread out so it doesn't clash with that lower version. And then the kickstart makes this just kind of swell, like it's this weird kind of like ambient delay.
Wave, come over. Girl, you know you caught my eye.
Then we're back to that kind of solo dry vocal.
Girl, you know you caught my eye. Slim black dress, can that be my memento? Yeah, if you wanna make my night, come over. I feel the heat.
Let's go to the second part of this. This is verse B. So we're going higher in my register. The vocal's gonna get a little bit more wet, so we are sending to a long reverb now, and we're sending to a quarter note delay, where before we were just doing a small little 1/8 note delay, a short reverb, and a little bit of parallel widening. We've talked about those sends all the time. We have a whole video on my send setup, so if you wanna check that, go check that video out. But other than that, we have this high vocal now.
I feel the heat on your tongue. I feel the heat from your body. You take the breath.
And what we're doing is we're duplicating that, and we're using the same exact chain that we used as that high come over kind of throw. So we're going up an octave, we're adding a little bit of repeater, a little bit of reverb, we're adding some doubler, we're adding some kickstart, and then we're filtering this out, and it sounds like this. And it acts as like this long, spacey reverb that just has this really cool kind of spice in it that you can't really hear in the mix, but it adds a nice little bit of character.
I feel the heat on your tongue. I feel the heat from your body. You take the breath from my lungs. 0 to 60 Bugatti. I'm not looking.
Then we use that low vocal that we had earlier for Come Over to layer up this phrase. So it sounds nice. It comes in on this.
Girl, if I'm real, you can stop me. If we're on the same page, then let's run. I want you right here on top me.
Now we're going into the pre-chorus, so we're back to one vocal, and this is kind of similar to the verse. It's just a little bit roomier.
So just run away with me, oh yeah.
And then we're just duplicating that with the same exact thing, pitch down an auto-tune, an octave, and then spread out with doubler.
Just run away with me, oh yeah.
And we left it nice and spacey.
Tap me. Just run away with me, oh yeah. We can find a place to be, oh yeah. So
let's get into this hook. We have a lead vocal, we have a left vocal, and we have a right vocal, sang 3 separate times, spread out, just so we have a nice big wide lead. And then we've got the high vocal from earlier that we talked about, just this little guy. And then we've got that low vocal that we talked about. So here's what it sounds like with my lead up the middle, my lead on the left, my lead on the right, and then those 2 artificial harmonies.
So baby, come my way. We can make love on the bedroom floor. We can go twice.
And then we've got these little reverb and delay throws. So there's a delay throw that happens on basically the end of every measure. It's just a mellow delay, 8th note, 100% wet, no spread whatsoever, and then a little bit of Pro R to tuck it into the background.
So baby, come my way. We can make love on the bedroom floor. We can go twice if you want some more. We can get high.
And yes, I am aware that I did interpolate Love Don't Cost a Thing by Jennifer Lopez. So before y'all come in the comments, I know it sounds exactly like that. It's just for this video. Other than that, we go into this post-chorus, and it's the same exact vocal processing.
So baby, come my way. So
and that is the entire instrumentation and vocal production. So let me show you what this sounds like if we play it all the way through, but that is how I would go about making an Afrobeat song. Let's check it out.
I know you wanna come my way. Red high heels making noise to the tempo. Yeah, if you wanna ride my wave, come over. Girl, you know you caught my eye. Slim black dress, can that be my memento? Yeah, if you wanna make my night, come over. I feel the heat on your tongue, I feel the heat from your body. You take the breath from my lungs, 0 to 60 Bugatti. I'm not looking for love, just some fun. Girl, if I'm real, you can stop me. If we're on the same page, then let's run. I want you right here on top of me. Just run away, run away, run away with me, oh yeah. We can find a place, find a place, find a place to be, oh yeah. So baby, come my way. We can make love on the bedroom floor. We can go twice if you want to, no. We can get high till the morning sun comes up. Baby, come my way. I can hold your body against the door. I can see the sweat dripping down your coat. We can go rough till the morning sun comes up. So baby, come my way, way. So baby, come my way, way. So baby, come my way, way. So baby, come my way, way.
And there you have it. That is how you make an Afrobeat song. Again, I know that I might not be the authority figure on this. It's not a genre I work in a ton. I know that I am just a dude who does a lot of pop music. However, I do listen to the style, so I hope that you liked my interpretation of Afrobeats. Again, use some of these elements. You can mix them into Western pop. You can do some kind of Afrobeats or, Afro-Cuban or Caribbean music. It's, summer's coming up. This is a really, really, really good vibe for summer. I actually hope that this genre ends up finding its way into Western pop a little bit more, because I feel like it is a nice little, change of pace from kind of the down-tempo, sad, cinematic, ambient stuff that we have going on over here in the US. But other than that, that's how you make an Afrobeat song. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That helps out our channel a ton. And then other than that, if you want to support us, you can head over to makepopmusic.com. Check out all of our sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs. We have a course over there. Most of the samples and all of the presets that you heard in this song are available on our website. So go check that out. Again, that is makepopmusic.com. But make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we do videos like this every single Friday. And make sure you comment down below what videos you want to see. But that's going to do it for this week. We'll see you guys next week with much more content. Much love, everyone. Peace.